like to tell you a story. So the best thing how to learn the things other than from the books is to learn from experience. First from our own experience, but the best is to let others fail, and then you learn from that. So maybe a couple of hints that will happen from the story that I'm in right now. So let's place ourselves in a context. So first of all, we know that IT is one of the most complicated environments in the world, and there is always a war inside. So the war is around not like physically people fighting, but between departments, between KPIs, between sales guys, marketing, between operations and IT, between the majority of the parties inside of the organization and outside, law, regulations. And we tend to live in that and accept it as it is. On top of that, we know that most of the organizations are constantly firefighting mode. So I was actually a consultant for 8 years, Agile and Lean consultant in one of the biggest companies in Europe and Scandinavia, including China. There is no big company without at least some portion of firefighting. And in most of the organizations, this is the regular business. So we used to work from fire to fire just to survive. And if you basically go to the guy and say like, hey, can we maybe improve based on our failures? No, I don't have a time. I need to just put the fires out. On top of that, you have developers, you have people who are basically coming to work to make a living, but also to be better, to accomplish something, to develop themselves. But of course we know the situation that as a developer I would like to just code and have a situation that nobody actually interrupts me and build this great new thing. The new SpaceX, the new Tesla, anything. But then those weird things like budgets, deadlines, organization structures, changes, new CEO, new metrics organization, flat organization, whatever is happening, and the things are changing. And on top of that, of course, the main fuel for everything is stress, caffeine and stress. So that's the main things which are driving each organization. So tell me raise a hand if any of you have heard the statement in development or in any other part of organization, which was something like, we don't have a time, we'll fix it later. Okay, yeah, I'm checking if we're in IT. So that's daily business. So there is never enough time to actually finish something. The good thing in that is that you are just working 8 hours. You are just working 8 hours, and after that you can come home in majority of the cases. And if you don't finish something, you'll finish on the next day. I've landed after 8 years of being consultant and being in big organization. I've tried to search something faster. So I've learned that the changes that I'm trying to do are not providing such a speed that I'm thinking it should, or I need to convince lots of people to actually change. So why not to remove this altogether and jump to something else? So I found out the idea of startups. Hey, that's a good idea. You just become your own CEO. You can actually decide about everything. You don't need to convince anybody, and you just, do it whatever you want. Then the speed is actually tripled, if not more. So first of all, what will happen is that you will actually have this one number in front of you, the number which is a countdown from the moment that you have received money from investors, or you basically have your own money, and then the number shows how much days you have until it will actually drop down to 0. So there are no discussions like, I will fix that bug later. There are no discussions, hey, it's 2 a.m., I should be asleep. If you need to actually do something, you need to do it fast, and there is always the best time to do everything is at night because everybody is sleeping, especially if you have customers around the world. So I've become this kind of, problem solver / Dr. House, whatever, / not sleeping at all. So solving critical business problems at night, and in the morning driving to investors and talking about the new business. And on top of that, basically having family, 3 kids, 2 dogs, doing search and rescue, whatever. So that was actually pretty good for me in the way that I've learned a ton of the stuff. So I didn't have limits. I could try everything. I could actually fail on everything, and mostly I was failing. But I've actually made it to the situation that I was able to do 5 pivots with one company and sell it after 2 years of development. That was Crowd Your Car. Then I was being able to actually, in the middle of that, start to build another company, which was actually sold pre first investment. So that was pretty fun. But then the speed is somehow killing you slowly. So you just notice that your kids are, getting older. You just don't see them so often. You travel and so on. So I decided to slow down a little bit. And I found out one company which I wanted to join and work just because of a couple of things. So the name of the company is STX, and this is a company which is special from the situation that it's 11 years on the market, so it's not so young. It's big enough to actually have lots of things to do as the coach, as the mentor, as the manager, as the person who wants to change the processes, improve, and basically do the business. And what is in the values, actually believing in our why, following the Agile manifesto, sharing the knowledge. So at least the basics were there. So I thought like, hey, let's do that. The problem is that if you jump there, I was jumping from the startup world, where you don't need to explain to the developer in 2 a.m. that he needs to fix the thing. You don't need to explain why to people, because everybody which are working with me believes in what we do. If you join the corporate company, whatever, you actually realize that if you ask people, hey, let's improve, I have seen something to be improved there, they will ask, why? It was working. Why should we improve? Or basically, it will actually create a pain because we need to change to that. Why should I do that? So I realized that, okay, we need to jump a little bit on different ship. So how to apply Agile, Lean, and the learnings from the startup world, from the big companies, from the fast companies, into any other without causing a pain or without assuming that the pain should be there. So first the basics, the Agile. So I joined the company and I was in the role, and still am, as a role as service delivery manager, so responsible for the major projects which are there, so few teams reporting to me. And the first thing I'm doing, running through the projects and checking the health, so what is happening. And to my surprise, first of all, everybody is saying that, yeah, it's okay, everything is okay. We are doing Agile, so we know we have sprint planning, so we have everything which should be there. Customer is happy, we just deliver, does the regular business, velocity is stable, nothing is a problem. And that's when it hits you. The main thing is that it's like with a spider. So you are not so much afraid of the spider when you see it. You start to be afraid of the spider when you don't know where he's hitting, when you lose the track of him. That's when it's scary. And this is the situation in most of the companies. People don't know what are the problems. People tell you, we don't have a problems. And that's what is most scary for, not only for me as the guy who is doing a problem-solving continuous improvement by nature, but if you want to actually keep a business for a long time, you know that either you improve or you decline. There is no status quo. And especially if you have a complex system like IT. So those spiders were the things that I started to search for. And the first thing that you will see and learn is that people are really great at one thing: accepting whatever situation we are in. So we are saying that the frog is weird species because you can basically put it in the water and start to heat the water up until it will boil and the frog will not escape. Should just used to it. And basically the same situation with human. If you actually enter the company and you have a process which is hard, which is causing a problems, which is not natural, you will complain once, you will try to change it, maybe. You will hit the wall with everybody else saying like, hey, we have tried already, don't do that. And then you accept it. So the things that you will see, this is one of the examples of the team. So this is pretty simple and straightforward. The Kanban board and the analysis of the burnout chart, but pretty specific. So I was asking, literally, we have a team of 5 developers and testers manually and Scrum Master. So we're asking, okay, so what is basically a burnout of testing effort and development effort? just to see if we have any problems. And what you will see immediately is, and this is the Scrum Master which was describing that, development is pretty okay. But then what we have here is we have two lines. First of all is the drop in the effort that we do. So the effort of the testing which is in a sprint, but there is something else. This is what they were calling testing debt. And I'm asking, what is it? They're saying, yeah, you know, this is like, we are always trying to manage to do everything on time, but sometimes it slips. So we have this something like a testing debt. So the things that we need to do, test or write, but we haven't managed to do that. So it's basically a little bit growing, but it's always like that. We are doing it. The same thing is happening when you see the flow. So this is basically a Kanban board. We are working in sprints, but visualizing that. And you see the situation where side of the sprint, we start the sprint, everything is on the left side, then it starts to move, and then it will actually stop in development for some time, and then it lands in testing. And nothing is really done in 2 weeks until very last 2 days. And then it's holy hacking. And then everything flies. I'm not saying that it's either a pattern or wrong implementation. That was just a situation which was there. And when you start to question that, everybody say like, yes, how it happens over 2 years. Customer is used to that, people are used to that. This is how we do it. So if you go to something which is pretty older than Agile or Lean and go to tier of constraints, you learn that every complex system is actually have one characteristic. And this characteristic is that every system has one and only one bottleneck at the given moment. So one element which is the weakest part of the chain. And in IT, this is basically, if we will take it into our consideration, this is the place where everything stops or slows down or causing the flow not to flow with the speed that we want. So the thing which was obvious from this situation that I was there in context of one team was that testing is basically a bottleneck. But probably you figure it out. That's a basic that you will see in every not working correctly team or from every book about Agile. So what you can do with that? And of course, the first question that came there was, can we add new tester? And that's natural thing that we'll try to do. Just add whatever, so we will balance. So we have 2 testers, 5 developers, so let's add 3 more testers, it will be great. The thing is that that's not solving the problem. So you need to have some more systematic approach. And from TRC, you will learn that there are 5 focusing steps. So first of all, if you have a constraint in a system, first you need to identify, checked, we done it. We know that it's testing for the development part. Then exploit the constraint and subordinate everything else to the constraint. So I was asking the team, you know that the testing is slowing you down. You know that whatever you take in a sprint, it will stop on the testing, that natural thing. What you would like to do with the flow to actually visualize it the most? And there came a couple of answers, but the most tricky one or the most interesting was, hey, let's just put the testing in the beginning. So we know that we'll actually deal with the most tricky things in the beginning, and we'll know that after the hardest thing, it will be more fluent. But you cannot move the whole testing there because you don't have a code. There is test and development, we weren't there. So what we have done actually, we have divided testing into 2 pieces. First one is test cases, scope, and then development, and after development only there was a testing. So we have uncovered that the whole testing activity was actually consisting of scope writing, scope review, and then test cases writing. What other thing is, if you have a constraint, you want to check what is happening with that. So you just monitor what they do the most, and you uncover that most of the time they were basically talking with somebody from Dhaka, which is a team in Bangalore which was testing manually. So the first thing that we implement is, let's limit whatever is coming from outside, let's use the constraint as much as we can. So we have put SLAs on that. That's not natural, but this is what was happening. And there, immediately things started to happen. I was asking a team what we can improve. And the first thing that happened is, after they've realized that it's not about improving running faster, but running smarter. So the thing that you want to uncover is that there are things which you don't need to do. And there are many of them. 90% of what you do is not adding value. One of the things and examples, they were testing for 5 different web browsers, And we've realized that for basically 2 years, we were testing also Internet Explorer 8 to 10 as a one part. And we have learned that basically from December this year or last year, it will stop to be supported. So there was no need to actually do the testing there. Just by that, we reduced that. And miracle has happened, 40% improvement in efficiency and the flow. Most of the things were starting to happen only because we have moved this not to change anything, just let's leave it, culture, to the situation where we are saying everything is possible, let's just don't assume that it's there, question everything and improve. And the team started to improve on their own, so I've left the team and started to actually deal with the whole organization. But then the thing weird has happened. So the improvement was going okay, the speed was faster and faster in the the team, and then I received a call. The call was from the C-level of the company that we were working for. And there were only 2 questions that we've raised. One is, Jim was asking, hey, Marcin, do you think that we should actually use DACA as a Bangalore, as outsourcing manual testing? I'm saying, like, why are you asking? Oh, you know, because you are speeding with the team, you improve the efficiency a lot, you are developing faster, but then everything stops on manual testing on the release. Okay, what does it mean? It means that doesn't matter how fast you work, if we will not improve the whole cycle, the delivery cycle, doesn't matter if we have you or not, you can actually go for a vacation. That's something interesting, so we have a business risk. So in one moment we have improved and then stand in a risk that, hey, they will close actually the contract and it will not work because there is no work to do, because if the company will collapse. So then you stand before the choice. That's what I'm calling this the screen from Matrix, where you have a blue pill and a red pill. So the developers always see basically a part of their system, what they do, and they don't care what is happening after or before, in most of the cases. You don't want to make the life complex, but as soon as you realize what is happening outside, there is no way coming back. So that reminds me of a story that Mike has already mentioned around the elephant. So the thing is that we tend to see only parts of the elephant, and we tend to work on the part that we see. The tricky part with the elephant situation is that if I will let you or the guys that were actually touching the elephant take care of the part that they have been touched or feel. So the guy which was actually saying that the elephant is a tree will start to pour the water on the leg. The guy who was actually catching an ear will say that's the butterfly, and it will try to take care of the butterfly. What will happen on the long run is that the elephant will die. And this is what is happening in most of the IT companies. Everybody tries to do their best on the piece that they see. Developers try to develop as fast as they can. On the release, we try to release as fast as we can. On management, we try to basically make life easier, but we only see our own system. We just push the things through our system on the other side and just forget about that. We don't know if this is the best for them. We don't know why. We don't know how to improve. We just do our work. So we've started to check what is the main blockage on, not on our side, but on the customer side. So that was tricky. So we needed to understand what is the business on the customer side on the release. And surprise, surprise, that's the analysis that came with their. Those are the 4 releases that we have done, or that were actually a part of the development. Every month, the release process starts, so there was a code freeze and the release. And then there was, inside of the release, there was testing, manual, done by Bangalore team, so as cheap as we can, that's the idea, let's outsource that. And there are a couple of trends that we have seen. First of all, most of the testing were basically smoke tests. Imagine that, okay? Manual smoke tests. Pretty great stuff. Then there was other parts where regression and then something called sanity checks. The thing is not as scary as it is. It's just a situation and data. The other thing is that throughout the releases we see that there is more and more test cases coming in. So more and more time is needed to be tested because it's manual. You cannot speed this up. So we are actually we are in the middle of that march. So more things coming in, it will be longer. If it will not change anything, it will basically be another bubble. It will actually burst. What is actually tragic in that, if you analyze it even more, so we spent like 1 month in the release testing, For what? Efficiency of that was that basically 60% were smoke tests, which are not adding any value, because we have basically the same thing tested in the development itself. Then the other part is 20% of regression testing. That's important. Do we destroy the functionality with the new ones? That was manual. And then if you analyze how many defects are coming from that, the number is 37. 4 releases, 4 months, 4 months of one team working on the release, 37 defects. Half of them were never fixed, which means that they were low priority. The button is on the right, and it should be a little bit 1 pixel to the left. Then in the middle, you have the real bugs, and there were like 7 defects found throughout 4 months, 4 releases. So we are in a situation where we have a very expensive solution, a very expensive release process and the testing, and it's not giving you a value. In the end, it's actually not only the problem on their side, because it's actually giving our testers work, because they need to write test cases only for the Dhaka team in Bangladesh to actually test. So we all know that it's not because they are stupid or they are trying to destroy everything, but it's only because the system is around them causing the situation like that. And the system in their context is, we need to cut the cost. That's a strategy that they have taken. That's one of the tactics that are in most of the companies. Let's just reduce the cost, then we'll have a bigger ROI. So if this is not their fault, we need to assume that. So we need to basically change the system. It's not that we need to kill somebody because they are doing a bad job. You just need to change the way how they think. And you can find out many other models, but one is Toyota Kata is actually giving you the simplest one. So we need to know if everybody is firefighting, everybody is having multiple actions on their side, and they don't know what is the main primary focus, there is one idea. Let's understand what's the direction and what's the most important thing for a company to achieve, and let's state this as main vision and challenge. Then understand where we are and select the target condition, what we want to achieve next. That will create a situation that you just don't do everything, you just do the most critical things on the way, and you select what are there. I will not tell you how to do that, I will tell you what's the target condition that we need to achieve. And of course, you cannot go there to the customer and the other company and say like, hey, your release process sucks. And by the way, fire all the guys in Bangalore and automate the testing, because that's what's coming to your head. And that was coming to mine also. So we needed to actually do a Kaizen workshop, whatever you call it, from the consultancy time. You needed to actually prepare all the homework on our side to understand their process, understand where they can be, and show it to them so they will understand. They will accept it as their vision and agree that, yes, this is the common agreement and common direction where we should be. So we have actually done the workshop in London, and the funny thing was that we were actually treated as experts from their process, which we are never actually a part of, because we are doing only development. And soon enough we have realized that, hey, the business is so critical that the need, it's not coming from the technical side, it's coming from the business environment. We need to do continuous delivery. We need to be able to do more than 365 releases a year, which means once per day. It's not that we should do more than 1 release per day, it's only we need to have the situation that we are able to release, which means that the next target condition should be 1 release per week. What is stopping us from doing that? So first of all, continuous deployment assumes that we have exact environments. It assumes that there are no handoffs. It assumes that we have automated builds and assumes that we have automated testing. That's a shortcut from our whole analysis that we have done. That's normal thing that you are also going through if you read Phoenix or continuous deployment and release. So we knew that, but interesting thing happens. When we presented that we need to do all of those things as a roadmap, they said like, hey, but you are doing only development. You don't know anything about the release. I'm saying, yeah. But the team immediately say like, hey, but you know that we are doing a support and maintenance pretty often. Yeah. You know that most of the defects that we find are actually environment issues. Setup, whatever AVS or whatever is happening there. They're saying, yeah, we knew that. So you know that we are also the team which is fixing that. They're saying, I know what you are saying. We've actually realized that the team was not doing DevOps. or they are not responsible for the architecture environment, but due to the fact that we're responsible for bug fixing, the whole team already understood how to deploy, how to release, how their architecture is working, what are the environments, how to access them, how to problem solve. So in one moment we have realized that, hey, we are already there with the responsibility and the work done. We just need to clarify what we should do. And that was a situation where we have created the setup where we not only do the development, but also the DevOps. So we divided the architecture into the halves, and we are currently responsible for the half of architecture from the idea to the release itself. And we are on the journey with the customer to actually do the product partnership rather than only the development. Have we actually heard about DevOps before? No. Have we heard or built a roadmap, hey, we need to have a continuous deployment? No. It was only because that was logical as a next step to improve. So we have actually found out the way how to do it. And by accident, we have landed on DevOps or continuous deployment. So the word spread fast in the organization, and that's one of the customers, one of the projects, and soon enough I have a bunch of people wanted to meet with me in my company and outside and say like, hey, we need to do the same for our customer. Because basically your team is speeding, your team is having great feedback, your customer is pretty happy, everybody expects the same from everybody else. So you cannot clone yourself. So I was starting to think, what should I do to make this automated, so to make the same process, the same thinking, the same journey happen without my help. So then you land on something that Michael's also mentioning, so the iceberg. So something which is not visible. I can teach you the tools, but if you don't practice that, if you don't do it every day, if you don't assume that you need to improve every single day, it will never happen. So the first thing that actually I have realized is, again, tier of constraints. So whenever I was discussing with the teams, I have experienced 8 years in consultancy, 4 years in startups and business development. So whenever you have a problem, I see symptoms in my head, I try to analyze what is the root cause and come up with a solution. But nobody see the whole process. I was just like an engineer. You are coming saying like, hey, I have a problem with my company. I'm looking at you saying like, yeah, you need to change component X. How do you know? That's just the answer. So the thing is that whole thinking, so analyzing what is the current problem, how they are connected, what are the root causes, are basically described in the process, and you can teach the others. So I've gathered a group of my Scrum Masters and team leaders and decided, hey, let's do it one by one. So the process is pretty simple. Just complain a little bit. So tell me what are the problems in the project. Tell me 10 main problems which are there. Try to check what are the dependencies, which are causing other, what are the connections between them. And then basically, if you do that, check if there is a full connection, if there is basically legitimate reservation applied. So if the one thing is really causing always that, or there is something as a precondition there. And what you will build is basically current reality tree. And surprise, surprise. In every system that you will have, there will be one thing which is in common. If you do it right, you have only one single root cause. One cause which is basically causing 90% of the issues that you have every single time. So that's examples what we have done in the teams. When we have analyzed the situation, everybody was complaining about million things. Example one, we are actually having process disturbed. So there are sprints which are rather a Kanban. So we have a sprint, but the customer is dropping things in. Hey, we cannot deal with that. Let's analyze it. Part of the understanding. Why we have that? Because there are short deadlines exceeding capacity of the team. Hey, it's common sense. Nobody has that before. Why is it so? Short time scale agreed and complex multiple customer application. Why is it that? Because we have a fixed price contract. That's the customer. And so sales team is not consulting the project team when accepting the contract. So the main root cause, sales teams is missing knowledge about development process, therefore making wrong decisions, therefore you have too many things to do, therefore you have a situation with a problem. Another example, and the interesting thing which will happen also to you is, when you analyze it in this way, you will land in a situation that the thing that we do cheaper, or basically start from the other side. So there is a fixed scope proposed to the end customer, which is a normal thing. That will actually create a situation that developers need to speed up. So they will select cheap and dirty solutions. If they will select cheap and dirty solutions, there will be lots of workarounds in the code, which will actually make the product more complex, which basically some flows will not be used in a functionality in the product, so more complex product, part of testing will not adding value because still we need to test everything. And then even simple feature will take lots of time, there is higher pressure to deliver faster, and you have something which is called reinforcement loop. So it will go on and on if you don't break it. And then if you try to analyze the other part, the branch, too many test cases in the functionality, can't prioritize test cases, we are supporting unused functionality. Why is it so? We are actually lacking understanding how the customer is using the product. We of course know what is a product, we know how it's basically used, but as a development team, we cannot decide if this functionality should be there or not, because we are missing a data critical how it's used on a daily basis, because NDAs, whatever is there. That's one example. If you try to deal with that, then you have the root cause and you know what to target. So you jump into the systemic approach, so either the 2A free thinking, PDCA, whatever you select. But that's having one problem. It's very complex for anybody to follow up. If you do it correctly, you will land in something which is statement like, it's obvious. So if you do it correctly, if you see grade A3, so problem solved, on one piece of paper, you say like, yeah, it's obvious. But if you start with the process, it's not so much simple. So we've simplified with the templates, we simplified with coaching. I was basically on every workshop which was happening, doing the Kaizen workshop with the templates, which were actually sticky notes only. So just do it first time, don't make it perfect, and realize that it's continuous improvement. So you meet with the customer again, and you will improve. And that yielded the situation that every Scrum Master was able not to only do the job. Every team was not only in the situation that they do the weekly job, the sprint job, but they were also having at least one A3 in progress, which means that one improvement, described in a story and implemented. So the thing what happened in the organization naturally is that we are no longer in this situation where there is a boss which is stating the strategy, which is stating the tactics for managers, and then there are resources, people, IDs, whatever, who are calling them in the big companies. We are rather actually switching to the situation that, hey, the developers, the team members, the Scrum Masters are coming with the ideas. So they've solved the problems, they've seen the generic problem, they actually find out what we can improve, and they say like, hey, we should actually spread it across the company. That should be a part of the strategy. And I'm taking that and saying, yeah, it's important, because I've seen it in one project, second and third one. There is a generic initiative, we should actually include that in a strategy. So there is no more actually the triangle which we have there. It's rather reverse. And that's something that we incorporated, not only as a part of accepting that we have this situation, but incorporating in every job description of the Scrum Master and Product Owner, that is their daily job to understand where the project is heading, what is the customer pain, how we are improving, what you're free. And you take the Toyota Kata approach, and you can implement one more thing, which is I'm actually having a session every week with every leader that I have in my projects. And the goal is only one, to understand personally what is happening basically in project, but that's just 5 minutes. Then I'm asking, what's your target condition? So what you are trying to achieve in a project? What are your obstacles right now? What's the progress? And how we can fix that? And I'm rather coaching him on improvement rather than telling him, hey, you need to improve this and that. So the thing which actually happened naturally in the culture is the statement I like to say, you can hire, the quote is that you can hire my time and are due to a full day and good effort. You can define my responsibilities, program my activities, and evaluate my performance. You can control what you see, but I can decide how far I go beyond that and for what. That's in startup which is giving. That's nothing which is understandable by managers in corporations. You need to develop people to give them motivation, and if you do that, if you give them the correct target, they will actually improve on their own. That's a change of the culture. So what is happening there is that First of all, management is no longer about making decisions. Management is about problem solving, not by yourself, but with a team. If you do that correctly, you don't have decisions to be made. It's your not daily business. The system will actually improve, and people will actually improve it instead of you. And in the end, if you can explain it simple, you don't understand it well enough. If you actually compare, if you go to the project and ask what's your problem, they will say like, yeah, it's so complicated, we cannot fix it. That means that they don't understand it. If you ask manager, what's your one main issue right now? What's your one main thing that you need to do in this project? And he will start to go on for 5 minutes about the complex situation environment. It means that he is not understanding the situation. Go and see, sit with a team, work with a team, understand what is there, change the culture, and give them something that they will actually want to wake up in the morning and go to work to fix the things and improve. That's the short story from my side.